Welcome to the SMWay podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Bader. The annual Wisconsin State Spanish Pronunciation Contest Championships is becoming a tradition in South Milwaukee. For those not familiar, it's a contest where students study a bit of text. This year and last year, it was a fragment of a poem, and practice pronouncing it exactly correctly. Today on the podcast, we're going to hear from students who participated and got a first or second place medal for their mastery of the poem. Then we'll hear from Cheryl Caruso on 3 decades of teaching a global language, Spanish, and how, during her career, language education is taught and how students are different today than before. But first, let's hear from our award-winning students and a recitation of the poem.
Fiesta en el mar, fragmento, Andrés Díaz Marrero. Suenan caracolas, flautas de coral, tocan los tambores.
Tocan los tambores, pulpo y calamar. Baila que te baila en suave compás.
En suave compás. Hay una estrellita que brilla en el mar.
Celebration in the Sea by Andrés Díaz Marrero. Conch shells sound, flutes of coral. They play the tambourines. Octopus and squid. They dance toward you in light rhythm. There is a little star that shines in the sea.
Sorry. What did you find challenging about memorizing or reading that poem for the contest?
I say the difficult part about it was pronouncing every word correctly and making sure you say it properly and like the way you pronunciation and stuff. I find that a challenge.
Rebecca, so
Yeah.
how about you? What did you feel about how did it go for you?
I feel like it went pretty well. The only hard thing for me was memorizing all of the words because you had to recite it from memory.
Mm-hmm. What made you want to even attempt to do this contest?
Well, I really enjoyed Spanish class, and I think that knowing a different language is really cool. So I thought it would be a cool thing to do.
When you actually had to get down into it, what was it as challenging as you expected?
I would say yes, just because you really had to pronunciate everything correct and just learn a different language and part of it.
Okay. Sorry, I'm Kate. Go ahead, Kate. Kate, tell me about the format. How did you actually participate in the contest?
So we would basically learn about the poem, the English meaning behind it, and then reading it in Spanish, and we would then record it and submit it to the organization, I guess, for what it was of us reading. So we would just read the poem in front of a Chromebook screen and submit it.
Did you get to do it more than once? If you made a mistake, could you do it again?
Yes, definitely, because I kind of messed up a few times. I think we all messed up a few times, and we basically all just did it a few times, made it so that it would be perfect, basically.
Eric, hi. So tell me, how many times did you record yourself doing it?
I mean, if I remember correctly, at least a couple, You gotta try to get it as best as you can. If you didn't get the first time, might as well go a couple more times, just see if you can do the best.
What was the challenge for you in doing this poem?
I mean, remembering what sounds certain letters make, because it's definitely a lot harder than English in my opinion, because you grow up around that stuff, but this definitely is something new. So
I imagine when you guys were doing this that it got stuck in your head. Did you find yourself sitting brushing your teeth thinking through the poem, or you're nodding yes, it gets stuck in your head?
I did. I found myself sitting in my room just saying it sometimes because I would just be thinking.
So when did you actually record the thing? When was it? Do you remember?
First week of March. Yeah, first week of March.
Do you remember any of it?
I remember the poem.
Yeah, you remember it?
I remember the poem because we repeated it so much, and every once in a while I'll just start randomly saying it. I'll just be hanging out with my soccer teammates or something, and I'll just randomly say the poem, and then they'll just start laughing at me or something like that. And my teammates who are Spanish, fluent in Spanish, would start saying, "Hey, good job, you know Spanish."
So I think we should turn to Mr. Linden now and put him under the spotlight. I think we're
Thank you
gonna
for
switch
having me.
chairs. Well, thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me about the utility of a contest like this for students.
Well, I think what really is a joy is the fact is that really outstanding students, such as the 4 winners we have today, got a chance to demonstrate their skills and all of their hard work that they put forward in Spanish class each and every day for the quarter that they were in Spanish.
And I guess does having to study a bit of text like this and commit it to memory change how a student might learn Spanish?
Well, I think it gives them a great deal of confidence, especially that when they bring home awards and are rewarded for the hard work that they put in. I think it encourages them to continue their Spanish studies, and it gives them the confidence that they can go out, branch out and do other things as well across other subjects.
So this is the 3rd year that you've done it. What have you learned going into your 3rd year and coaching students?
I think South Milwaukee students in general, in the 3 years that I've had them, put forward a great deal of effort. They dedicate themselves fully to doing the very best that they can, and that's really what it's all about. We are all very proud of the effort that our students put forward for 3 years, and this is just another example of hard work paying off.
Joining us from her classroom at South Milwaukee High School is Cheryl Caruso. As most students here know her as Senora Caruso. Welcome to the SMY podcast.
Thank you so much.
So this is your last year in South Milwaukee. Tell me, how long have you taught? How long have you taught here, and how long have you taught in general? And what got you into teaching and then teaching Spanish language?
Well, yes, this is my 15th year here at South Milwaukee. Prior to that, I taught for 16 years in the Madison area in a high school called Monona Grove High School, which is right next to Madison. And I did take a 3-year break from teaching to pursue other things, and then realized that I really wanted to be back in the classroom. And so I was lucky enough to come here to South Milwaukee.
So what got you into teaching in the first place? And clearly you have a passion for it. What sparked that passion?
I initially thought when I was going through my undergrad at UW-Madison that I would not be a teacher, a Spanish teacher, or any teacher. And as I went through my Latin American Studies degree for my BA, I was still pretty convinced that that wasn't going to be my path. And then eventually I did go on to do a master's in Portuguese, and then I came to realize that education really was interesting to me, and so I pursued my PhD in curriculum and instruction at Madison as well. Along the way, having had a little bit of experience teaching at the university level, I realized that after attending a day with a colleague from grad school who was teaching high school Spanish, that I had kind of a soft spot in my heart for the high school level. And so, as a result, I found myself teaching high school Spanish.
What sparked your interest in learning language in the first place?
I love to learn, and I love learning new languages. I also speak Portuguese, and I'm working on my Italian. And so, I guess I really wanted to share that passion with students, and I really wanted to have them have a great experience with language, because for me, language is so important. It's part of who I am. And I wanted to, at the very least, have them have a great experience with their language studies, and possibly see that light in their eyes when they realize that they love the language too.
Was there any one memory or one moment when you kind of decided that language was going to be your forte, and that it's something you want to spend your life learning about?
I would say that I would give credit to my high school Spanish teacher for that. She inspired a lot of curiosity about the language and learning the language. And when she decided to take a busload full of Oregon High School, Oregon, Wisconsin, Spanish students to Mexico on a bus. The very first moment that we got to Mexico and I just saw this landscape very different from Wisconsin, and I heard these beautiful words coming out of people's mouths, that was the moment. That's when I knew that this was going to be a part of my life forever.
Do you remember her name?
Sharon Chamberlain.
Did you stay in touch with her after high school?
As a matter of fact, I did stay in touch. She went on to do other things in the business world after her career ended. I don't know, when she stopped teaching, but I know she was at it for a good long time. So, she was very, very happy to find out that I had followed in her footsteps.
You at this point in your career, you have seen generations of students come through, many of whom may even have students now, in your classroom. Think back to, it can even be when you started in South Milwaukee, but when you started your career, what were students like, and what were they, what was studying Spanish a cerebral enterprise, and has it become more of a practical tool, or kind of, what are your thoughts on that in general? How have students come to take an interest in the language?
Right. I would say that it has a lot to do with our global society. I mean, back when I first started teaching, which was a long time ago, I think that we did not have the connections, both informal and formal, to the rest of the world. And so how we studied the language was based much more on kind of, book study, memorizing dialogues and things of that nature, always moving towards the hands-on, give the building blocks to create your own words and utterances in the language, and applying that to real-world situations. And I think that's really what we strive to do these days in foreign language education.
I don't want to miss out. You said your seminal moment was that trip, right? Yes. And we give that experience here. You don't personally, I don't think, right, do that. But so I guess my question is, as a language department, what big experiences do we give our students, even if it's not particularly in your classroom?
Right. So there are field trips, just an example of things that we do and have done in the past, to bilingual schools in the Milwaukee area. And particularly, I believe it's Escuela View is the name of the school. And students will go and have an experience in a bilingual classroom with elementary students and interact with them, maybe bring some activities for them to do. That's one. The travel is the thing the travel abroad is a huge part of those experiences, because this is the part that's a little hard to explain to a student unless they've actually had the experience. And I will say that the Costa Rica trip that occurred over spring break, when I talked to the students that came back, it was a life-changing experience for them, and they will tell you that, and it just shows that was the case. So those would just be two examples.
Great, thank you. And how about the students? How have they changed, or are students the same now as when you started?
I would say that I notice now that students have a lot more needs in the social emotional realm. That has become evident to me as I have progressed in my career, and I feel like it's up to me as the person in the room with them to really be sensitive to that and really assist in my role as much as possible to help them negotiate this time in their life.
A couple years ago now, I spoke to a grad whose mother is Colombian. She grew up speaking Spanish, but she told me that she took Spanish to have a formal education in it, to learn grammar. Are you finding that more and more now?
I would say that many students that I come across, I teach the Spanish 1 and Spanish 2, so I have a lot of freshmen and sophomores, and I have students who have some experience with Spanish outside of the classroom, be it family or in other contexts. And so I do find that they have come here to kind of get that nice foundation in their language so that they might be able to express themselves a little bit more in the language.
For years, I was the editor of a bilingual newspaper in Manhattan. It was in a Dominican neighborhood. I had passable Spanish out of college, but I could not write, obviously, in Spanish, not to a journalistic level. And it not only did it go through a translator, it was then looked at again by a scholar to then edit it again to make sure the grammar and punctuation was right. So I get that idea that some of the formality of it, something that native English speakers get from day one in kindergarten, that you're trying to pack into a high school career. How much do you get to go into that?
I would say that one of the most important things for language learning is to hear as much as possible in the target language, otherwise known as comprehensible input, right? And so the more we can bring to our students as world language teachers in terms of hearing everything from the daily routine, please get out your Chromebooks, please get out your textbook, open to this page. It's just the very basics, obviously, in the target language, and everything all the way to, maybe discussing a story in very rudimentary terms at that level, the lower levels, but always trying to have the language learners become more autonomous and claim the language for their own.
Yeah, I mean, so we heard from students at the beginning of the podcast, really focusing on their articulation and pronunciation, and succeeded because they were contest winners. I'm wondering, in your experience, if someone took full advantage of the Spanish language program here all the way through graduation, do you think they could come out and speak Spanish to a native speaker out on the street?
I think they would have, I think it really depends on the person, the student, but if they did take, as you say, the full advantage, I think they would come out with some really amazing language skills. Yeah.
And I guess, is it a foundation then to maybe pursue it further in college? Is that the intention?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things we want to instill in our language students is that desire to continue perfecting the language, deepening your understanding of it, and thus your ability to produce it in authentic situations.
You'd mentioned Chromebooks, and it just occurred to me that maybe technology has come into play when it comes to language learning. How has it?
Oh, absolutely. I can remember in my early days standing up in front of the class with a set of paper flashcards with the Spanish on one side and the English on the other, right? And just going through the flashcards with the whole class, right? And then having them hopefully make their own flashcard sets and do it on their own to prepare for what we would do in class. And now, of course, there are so many different digital platforms that Quizlet, for example, where you're basically doing the same thing except it's digital. And I think that it's so helpful to students because it's sort of their language, if you will. So they are so familiar with that's the way to access that vocab.
Does technology ever get in the way? I imagine a Google Translate or taking a course in Duolingo might not exactly follow the path that you were laying out for students.
Oh, absolutely. Google Translate is the nemesis because we obviously want to know what students can do, not what Google Translate can do, right? And we really are very clear with our students that Google Translate will not enter into this dance that we're doing and learning the language. So, and it's interesting because, of course, you will have those who don't believe you that you will be able to tell, but when they're, writing at a graduate school level in Spanish 1, it's kind of a tell. Absolutely.
Yeah, I imagine that school-wide is a struggle now with AI and those kind of things as a way to either, if you're in a rush to get an assignment done or just outright cheat, is something you're all struggling with.
Yes, I would agree with that, and that's actually another skill we want to teach students is time and place for things and the value of, I guess I want to say, it's helping them get confident in their own abilities to express themselves and that their ideas are really good and they need to express them.
And then if we could talk, I know that you teach more than just comprehension and language. A lot of this is about culture. Talk about the student experience and how that comes into play and the value of that in a rounded high school education.
Let's see. That's a big question.
That's a big question. I'm just thinking about, understanding otherness, right? Or understanding a culture that is maybe not your own, or maybe your peer but not yours, and that this kind of might lead to some understanding. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I've had a poster. It's down now because I'm retiring, but it's the one thing that I always believed in from the start, and I had it in my old classroom in a different school, but it had a lovely picture on it of some penguins, actually, and it said, understand the similarities and celebrate the differences. And I think that's what I have always tried to do in my role as a teacher of languages, is say there's so many things that we share that are the same for people around the world, but how you accomplish those things may be different. You may eat your main meal at noon rather than for supper, and you're still eating, but it's just how it occurs, and to really appreciate the fact that there's more than one way to do things in the world.
So you are retiring. What are you going to miss about Spanish language education?
I am going to miss several things. I'm going to miss that moment where you can see it in their eyes and you can see it come across them, that they get it, that they get whatever it is you're working on at the moment, or that it goes beyond that. Like I said before, that you just kind of see that they have fallen in love with the language. And that's not the case for all students, of course, but when that happens, it's a pretty cool thing. The other thing I'm going to miss is, and I was telling this to my Spanish 2 the other day, they have it has quite a few sophomores in it. And I just said, I'm going to miss seeing you guys as you walk through your career as a high school student, because at the end, you're so very different than when you were a freshman, when you started. And I'm going to miss seeing the evolution of you as a person, becoming even cooler than you are now,
That's great. Thank you for that. Congratulations on your retirement. Thank you for your time here at South Milwaukee. You're going to be missed, and I'm sure students will miss you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Gracias.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast episode. We want to wish Senora Caruso and all our retirees best wishes in the next stage of their lives. We are poorer without you, but excited for you. This is the last regularly scheduled episode of the school year. But we'll be back in the summer with stories from summer school, a celebration of the Performing Arts Center's 20th anniversary celebration year, and more. Stay tuned.